Hello, citizens of Gotham. My name is Graham Elwood, and you are watching The Political Vigilante, bringing truth to the citizens of Gotham. This is the People's Channel. We have a fantastic show for you today. I know we were going to, normally we start at 5, but due to our guest schedule and what just is happening in the Bitcoin/crypto space, I really wanted to get our guest on this show. So we're starting early, but I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody watching on YouTube, on Rockfin, and on the Twitch. And of course, we will take this interview. You're watching it live, but I will edit it up and be dropping clips from it throughout the week. So let's just get right into it, folks. Like, share, subscribe, put this out on your social media, and tell people to watch right now. We'll have our moderators joining in the chat soon. So I know it's kind of a surprise time, but here we go. So he's the co-host of the Orange Pill podcast. He's also the Johnny Appleseed of Bitcoin, if you will. And we just did a show together at Adopting Bitcoin in El Salvador. Let's please welcome him to the show, ladies and gentlemen, Max Keiser.
Hey, Graham. Nice to see you and finally get to be on your show. This is great.
Yes. Thank you for joining us. I really wanted to have you on the show for several reasons. One, we talked like 2 years ago and you kind of predicted, you didn't use exact names, but you predicted what happened with FTX and these people like Sam Bankman-Fried and now CZ. And you tweeted out yesterday that he was one of the guys that you and Stacy, when you got to El Salvador, were like, we don't want these kind of people coming into El Salvador. And the shitcoiners, you know, it's that's what they're doing. That's what they're up to. So for those of you who don't know, I'll just tell you real quick what happened is he's CZ, which is a settlement with the Department of Justice and the U.S. Treasury. He has to, looks like a $4.3 billion fine, and he's stepping down. And I don't know, he might be doing, it sounds like he's going to get a slap on the wrist. I don't know if he's going to do any actual time, but Max, you know, you've been predicting these kind of people. And when I heard you and Stacy talk at Pacific Bitcoin and also at Adopting Bitcoin, you talked about like, we've been deliberately trying to keep these people out of El Salvador. And I didn't realize you were talking specifically about this guy. So how do you see this? I mean, you predicted this was happening. Are you shocked by the fines and everything, or how do you see this?
No, it was all, as you say, it's all very predictable. So, I mean, there's a couple of points you make there. In the case of El Salvador, the country made Bitcoin legal tender, and then Max and Stacy moved there, and we went to work in helping the president create Bitcoin country. And so this meant, for example, passing some new laws, the new digital asset law, which states that Bitcoin is money and everything else is essentially an unregistered security. So we didn't we don't waste time trying to wade through 10,000, 20,000 different shitcoins and look at the nuance of this or the nuance of that. We're just saying that they're all unregistered securities, and we're willing to make that statement because there's a lot of benefits to it. The SEC doesn't have really any guidance on these shitcoins, these altcoins. They are making policy through enforcement, right? So every time they're bringing a lot of people into court and they're suing them for doing things with their shitcoins. But there's no real straightforward guidance from the SEC. So therefore, I think the laws in the U.S. are going to have to catch up to El Salvador, because El Salvador is very clear. And so that's why El Salvador has had the full benefit of being Bitcoin maximalists. And there's a huge benefit to being just Bitcoin and Bitcoin only and keeping all the shitcoins out. And we're seeing that benefit play out right now with lots of different things happening in El Salvador. And Bitcoin is a big part of it. And as far as CZ goes, he was trading shitcoins on Binance. We've said all along that the SEC is eventually going to take them all down. They're all going to be in trouble. They're all going to be shut down eventually because they're all securities. They're all essentially unregistered securities. He's trading a bunch of unregistered securities. He's also engaging either allegedly or he's now been essentially pleaded guilty to things like wash trading. And wash trading is illegal, has been for a long time. Something like 50% of the volume on Binance is wash trading.
Well, can you explain what wash trading is real quick?
Yeah, it's basically just your trade. The CZ was essentially trading with himself. So he's buying and selling the coins in his own account to create the illusion of volume and to manipulate price. So that's illegal. And but all exchanges to some degree, either on purpose or sometimes through accident, end up engaging in wash trading. But in his case, in the case of Binance, the report that came out recently shows that they were 50% of the volume is wash trading and wash trading. Now, another point about this, Graham, is that because they're such a big player in the space and because they're engaged in a lot of wash trading, the SEC has been dragging their feet on the ETFs, the exchange traded Bitcoin funds. And they keep saying that we're not happy with the price discovery. We're not happy with how price discovery is in Bitcoin. And what they're referring to is really CZ, who's a big player who's manipulating the price of Bitcoin through wash trading. So now that he has really been neutralized and taken out of the picture, these ETFs are going to go through. So we have some news on the the GBTC from from Barry Silbert. Grayscale. And so it looks like they're getting very close to being listed. The trading symbol will be BTC, which is a great symbol. All the tens of thousands of stockbrokers in America and around the world will be able to call up their clients and say, put some money into Bitcoin, put some money into BTC, this Grayscale ETF. And the price is looking really good. The Binance news didn't hurt Bitcoin price at all. He was never really a key figure in the Bitcoin space. He was always a key figure only in the shitcoin space. People say, oh, CZ helped people onboard people into crypto. Well, maybe he did, but all those people are going to jail. So he helped to onboard people into jail, right? So he should get a prize from the National Prison Association or something because he created a lot of inmates for these crypto traders. But he's not a Bitcoiner and he has no impact on Bitcoin, and he had nothing to do with onboarding anybody into Bitcoin, minimally speaking. He's one of many. He's just a minor player in all of this. And now he's gone and the price is going to rip higher because now we're going to have an ETF and this bad actor is being taken out, just like Sam Bankman-Fried was taken out. He was a very bad actor, just like, I could name 20 people over the past 10, 11, 12 years since we've been into Bitcoin that emerged as bad actors and did bad things. And now pretty much I think he was the last of the major bad actors. So he was kind of on the Sam Bankman-Fried level. I don't see any other people of that scale, doing shady things. So I think really now the decks are clear for this bull market, this next phase in the Bitcoin bull market to get started and to really take us to the $200,000 to $300,000 a coin level.
Yeah. And it was so interesting too, like a year ago when CZ was like publicly battling with SBF. And I was like, so these guys, it's like two like rival gangs saying, well, you cheated more than I cheated or something. It was fascinating to watch that.
Yeah, there's a lot of cross trading amongst these players. They operate like a cartel. So in any cartel, and you see these cartels often. You see, for example, in the gold trading business is run by a cartel. The bullion banks and the major gold players and gold miners have a cartel, and they manipulate prices, and they do so in ways that are provably illegal. and there's always lawsuits being waged against them, and it never seems to bother, get in their way, right? Because the law is very flexible, and it applies to some people sometimes. It depends on a lot of things like politics and other factors. In the case of CZ, he was politically in a very bad place because he was interfering with Blackstone and all these major players on Wall Street who wanted to get their ETF listed, and they wanted to start making money. So this guy was getting in their way. So they decided to charge him with stuff and to put him into the courtroom doing stuff that they do, right? They wash trading is done by these guys all the time, and all these illegal practices are done by everybody all the time. And but it's convenient to be able to charge somebody with that when you need it to get to service your own agenda. And so CZ is not one of the gang. He's not connected. He's not part of Wall Street. So they had to get rid of him.
Do you think, I mean, ultimately it seems like, all these ETFs, BlackRock are going to be beneficial to the Bitcoin price, and it'll drive the bull up. I just have some trepidations about BlackRock just internally, just as a company, from what they do in terms of buying up houses and keeping them off the market to drive up rents and mortgages and stuff like that. Ultimately, how do you see BlackRock?
So BlackRock's terrible.
Right.
They're one of the worst players on Wall Street. They're completely without morals whatsoever. Their business model is just repackaging stocks and selling them as ETFs. They own more. Their ETFs own more stocks than there are stocks, right? They're just peddle there, and they charge a fee for that. And they have incredible political influence that they use to make it easier for them to game the system. And they are really a plague on capitalism, but they become a useful idiot in this case. The thing about Graham is that Bitcoin was really the first major financial play in history where the plebs got to it first. Usually it's the reverse. Wall Street makes their money, and then they sell off bits and pieces, right? Companies go public, and the insiders make tons of money, and then the public can buy shares in the aftermarket, and the feast has already happened, and they can buy shares. But here in this case, the feast happened by the plebs, by the people who were marginally on the of society buying Bitcoin when it was $1 and $5 and $10, and now that it's getting close to 40,000, now you see Wall Street coming in. So it's really a reverse of what we've seen historically with markets, in that the little guy got there first, and they've made a ton of money, and now Wall Street comes in, and everyone's going to make a ton more money. So yeah, BlackRock and all these other firms, Fidelity, will launch ETFs, and it'll bring in a tremendous amount of capital. And the product itself, the Bitcoin ETF, is an inferior product to owning Bitcoin outright, just like the gold ETF is an inferior product owning the gold outright, because in the gold ETF, if there's a credit problem with the custodian bank and they go bankrupt for some reason, it says in the fine print that they can settle with you, the ETF owner, in cash. So you don't get gold for your gold ETF. You get paper money, which is the thing you're trying to avoid. Same thing with a Bitcoin ETF. It'll have contingencies in the prospectus that make it very much inferior to simply buying Bitcoin and putting it into cold storage and taking it out of the system. But nevertheless, it will unleash a lot of capital. And, we're going to get to a valuation of Bitcoin, which would be similar to gold. So gold is in the 10 trillion approximately market capitalization, the global gold stock that's traded. And Bitcoin is just under 1 trillion. So you're going to get a 10x on Bitcoin pretty quickly here. So you're talking 400,000 to compete with gold. I think we could get it on this move. You're going to get it definitely above 250,000 on this wave, on this move. Will we get to 400,000 on this without a correction? And Bitcoin corrects pretty severely every few years. Possibly, we'll have to see how it develops. But I have a feeling that because the fiat money world is collapsing so rapidly, and the model of the nation state itself is collapsing, that we could be pretty shocked on the upside in terms of where Bitcoin is going.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the global, as the fiat, the BRICS nations are getting stronger. And, a conversation you and I had in El Salvador, you were telling me how China and Russia are the two top purchasers of gold over the last 20 years. And everyone's getting off of the dollar. And obviously, in the long run, that's got to bode well for Bitcoin, but it could pose a short-term collapse that would bring the Bitcoin price down. Kind of like when COVID hit and the Bitcoin price dropped to whatever, under 4,000, but then within a year it was up towards 50 or 60,000. How do you see with BRICS and all of this stuff, this global finance and the nation states going away and everybody getting off the dollar? How do you see that playing out in the next 12 to 24
in
months?
dollar terms, the price of Bitcoin would go higher, right? If the dollar is going down, your dollar price in Bitcoin goes up. So we very happy to see the dollar go down. Bitcoin is already making new all-time highs in currencies that are undergoing hyperinflation, as we see in Argentina and Venezuela and Turkey. In these places, Bitcoin is already hitting new all-time highs because their local currencies are collapsing. The dollar is it's the cleanest shirt at the laundry, right? It's a fiat money, but it's on a relative to these other fiat monies, it's the less worst option. But eventually it too will go this way of all fiat money. So fiat money is we're at the end game for fiat money, which was like a 300-year experiment. And then in 1971, of course, we went on an all fiat money for the world when Nixon closed the gold window here in the United States. So this is all winding down. We're moving toward a post fiat money, post central bank, post nation state world, and gold will have a place in that world. And countries like we said, China, Russia, and others are aggressively buying gold. Central banks still settle in gold, and gold will still be around, and it'll still have a bid, and people will still buy it, and it'll still be a safe haven play. But as Paul Tudor Jones has said, all the dynamics that go in, the macroeconomic dynamics that go into analyzing and projecting where the prices of these things are going, he likes inflation hedges. He says, yeah, gold, of course, is a classic inflation hedge, but Bitcoin is the fastest horse in the race. And, I'm looking at the numbers here myself, and I'm figuring for every dollar move in gold up, you're going to get $30 to $40 in Bitcoin. So, it's a supercharged way to play the collapse of the fiat money world, which includes the dollar. The dollar is really in jeopardy. The country, the United States, is printing money just to pay the interest on the debt, just the interest, right? So that's debt monetization and a debt spiral. And the GDP is not going to suddenly go up 50x to create enough tax revenue to pay down that debt. That in fact, the GDP is shrinking. The amount of the dynamics are horrible. For the fundamentals of the US dollar are terrible. And everyone who's got a portfolio, and there's about $100 trillion under management by portfolio managers around the world. And that game is basically asset allocation. You're allocating your portfolio to avoid risk and get the biggest return you can. And the dollar is being downsized. People are moving out of the dollar. They're moving into Bitcoin. Bitcoin is now considered to be a safe haven. It's considered to be a risk off investment, which is incredible because when we started back in 2011, when it was $1, it was considered to be the most speculative play in history, right? And now it's considered to be the safest asset in the world, safer than bonds. It's less volatile than bonds than in 2023, safer than the property market. Property market's collapsing. Look at all these commercial real estate deals every day. Washington, D.C., All these New York City, you know, these huge office buildings that were bought for $300 million are going on sale for $30 million. It's like the biggest markdown in commercial real estate. It's unbelievable. And of course, that commercial real estate is the collateral that holds together all the banks that make all those loans. That's their primary business, is making real estate loans. So that means the balance sheet of all the major banks are severely impaired, which means they're going to have to get a massive bailout, which means going further into debt, which means interest rates are going to go even higher, which means the dollar is going to be continuously under attack. And nobody wants the dollar. Nobody wants the U.S. Treasury bonds. And into this mix is Bitcoin as a safe haven play. It separates money from state. It's unconfiscatable. It's cheap relative to gold, way cheap relative to gold, and it's cheap relative to the bond market, the global bond market. It's still incredibly cheap relative to what you could call the total addressable market, TAM. Total addressable market for Bitcoin is 400 trillion, because that's the total size of the pot of financialized assets on planet Earth. And it's everything on planet Earth that's traded is heading towards zero against Bitcoin, because Bitcoin becomes the global reserve standard.
So, you know, the banks, like you said, they've got all this money in commercial real estate, and they feel like the banks are going to go belly up. Although Joe Biden in the spring said your money's safe. So that made me feel good. Joe Biden said that. That's like just the tip of, of anytime somebody says your money's fine, I was like, oh my God, get it out of the banks immediately. As the nation states collapse, and America is like the biggest one, and it's a collapsing empire, I'm a little worried of, like, ultimately I see Bitcoin winning in this, and you and others have helped me become like a full-on Bitcoin maximalist. But how do you see the United States as it starts collapsing? Are they going to do some crazy stuff? Like, because you've got Gary Gensler, who knows exactly what Bitcoin is, and yet he says he doesn't know what it is or whatever. And I think I saw Kathy Wood recently say she thinks he's making a move to be Secretary of Treasury. Anyway, but how do you see this American collapsing empire? It is collapsing. It's not will it collapse? It is collapsing. It's just how deep will the collapse go? How far will it go? But how is America going to react to this?
Poorly.
In your eyes.
I mean, the reaction is going to be bad. You already see signs of it, because the collapse is happening. It's just not evenly distributed. So in cities like Chicago and other cities, they're already in free fall. They're already mass looting on the streets, mass, violence. It's already become road warriors in a lot of places already in the United States. So, and that's growing, and people are leaving. It's what's amazing with El Salvador is actually they're experiencing reverse migration. There's more people fleeing to El Salvador now. They're migrating to El Salvador as economic freedom, as a safe, secure environment with a president who is a visionary and a great leader, right? These are all very attractive attributes, all very great bullet points why you would go and live in a country with all these opportunities. There are strong opportunities there. And so, the SEC and Gary Gensler, they've been trying, I think, to, as I said earlier, they needed to get Binance and CZ out of the way before they let the spot market ETFs for Bitcoin trade. And so they were successful in doing that. In the US, you have something like 90% of the wealth is now concentrated in 5% of the population or less. And that trend toward feudalism is getting sharper. So you'll have 99% of the wealth will be in the hands of 0.01% of the population. So you're back to feudalism. You're back to lords and serfs. So and those people will build very tall walls, and they'll live in those gated communities with their own armed militias, and they'll have everything that they need inside the castle, and everyone outside of the castle, will be in a very bad state, but that seems to be the trend, and there's no political will to fight that. the political, the way to get the population to sign on to that is twofold. Number one, they'll bring in CDBC, CBDC, central bank digital currencies. So the way that they'll do that is they'll say, oh, hey, you've got $10,000 in your account. We're going to convert that to a CBDC and give you 100,000 of the CBDC. And you're like, wow, that's awesome. I'll take 100,000 of your CBDC. Thank you. But, within 6 months, the purchasing power of that 100,000 in CBDC will be less than the purchasing power of the 10,000 you gave up to get the CBDC. You'll be a lot poorer because they'll print at an accelerated rate. The CBDC will be printed at 10 to 20 times the rate that they're even printing the dollar. So it's a recipe toward hyperinflation. And it's a very strong surveillance technology. So it'll be impossible to really not be part of what I call the casino gulag at that point, where people are basically chained to online platforms playing video games for a few points to swap out for a CBDC coin to buy a protein pill to stay alive another day. It's really like a prison. It's an electronic prison, but it looks like a casino. So it's like Las Vegas, but you can't leave the slot machine. You can't leave. The only way you can get a protein pill is to stay there and keep clicking on the fruit machine. That's it. Which a lot of people do. If you go to Vegas and you see people banging those fruit machines, like they're doing it, like they're already zombies in some kind of quasi-conscious state of narcolepsy or whatever. So that'll be applied toward 200 million people. And they'll all be playing the America casino game in the casino gulag. And they'll be, the guys at the top will be living in their castles and flying around. But that's the transition that's happening right now.
Yeah.
So there's no political agenda to stop it. Certainly not on the Democratic side. They're the worst offenders, right? They believe that all politics is based on, cultural agenda, identity politics is all their politics. And that, of course, is the same thing as Mao Zedong. That was this cultural revolution, that if we all wear little green jackets and carry a little red book, everyone will be happy. That's the Democrats are essentially Maoists in America. And they are trying to impose communism. And it's working, right? So Joe Biden is like a demented version of Mao Zedong, essentially.
He seems more like a Reagan Republican to me. Like he seems.
Well, I mean, the Reagan. Anyway, that's a bit of a see Reagan. It can talk differently about Reagan, and because it's a slightly different story. But so therefore, since they control the narrative in the media, pretty much, people are like unaware of this. That it's happening. They're kind of just sleepwalking into this neo-communism. So there's no pushback really. And so on the right, now you're talking Republicans. So then you're going to be talking the Republican Party and Trump and Reagan and stuff. I mean, that's a different political approach. This is more for me, I'll say I identify more with that side of the aisle. I don't identify with the left side of the aisle. I'm much more on the right side of the aisle. So I know that in this space, the liberal comedian space, there's a pushback against the right wing side of things. But never, I'm happy to talk about it. Yeah, I'm always willing to learn. Maybe I'm missing something, but what I'm saying, like Jimmy Dore, Jimmy Dore is still really hoping that the left, the liberals, the progressives, get something done, and it's very admirable that he would have those feelings. But at what point do you say I got to take a different approach? It's not going to ever happen. It's not going to happen. And you got to look at the other side of the aisle and start considering some things that they have been saying that maybe you have been overlooking, sadly, because now let's go to Argentina, right? So Argentina just elected a new president, Javier Milei, and he is very much in this new post nation state, post central bank, post fiat money mold, which is more on the Ron Paul side of the equation. Okay.
Yeah. Let me address a couple things here. So for me, I don't call myself liberal at all. I'm an anti-war, pro-labor socialist. I think the two-party system is awful. I don't like the Democrats. I don't like the Republicans, and I have given up any hope that there's going to be some left revolution. America's done. I just tell people buy Bitcoin and grow your own food. But so I just want to say that. And I think that's the. If you follow the money, both parties, they both support war. They both support Wall Street bailouts.
Let me jump in here again for a second. Okay. So, when talking about the left, essentially what you're talking about is labor. Okay. That the labor force needs representation in government, and they need representation in the economy. And they need organized labor, and they need someone fighting for them for higher wages. And the issue is that either one of a couple things can work. Either you have a central bank like the Federal Reserve Bank, and you have a very strong organized labor force. So in other words, the central bank works for the oligarchs, and organized labor would work for labor, and that the labor would fight to have their wages tied to money supply. So the average hourly wage right now would be closer to $50 to $60 an hour to keep pace with the amount of money that goes into Wall Street's pockets. Okay, that's one system that could work. Or you could have no central bank and you have no organized labor. This would be more of a free market system. And that would also work. It has its pluses and minuses, but it would also work. The worst possible combination would be that you have a central bank and you have no organized labor, which is what you have in the United States right now.
Right.
Right. And that's the worst.
Yes.
So, and labor will have no ability to fight the central bank by lobbying for higher wages and higher benefits, and by getting the Democratic side to give them more food stamps. That will never equal the playing field. Their only way to equal this playing field is to get onto Bitcoin. By essentially walking away from the entire fiat money system, central banking system, and going on a Bitcoin standard. And we already see what's going on in El Salvador as a good example of what happens when you go on a Bitcoin standard. President Bukele just gave a brilliant speech where he's saying that, he was told when he came into office that if he got rid of the gangs, he would kill the economy, because the gangs are a central part of the economy. There's also not only the gangs themselves who are extorting billions and then recycling that into the economy, but there's the families that they support. And then there's a lot of ancillary jobs that go into the whole gang economy. So, his decision was that I'm unwilling to accept that. I'm going to get rid of the gangs. I'm going to take crime out of the GDP figures. And he did. And guess what? The economy actually went up, because now you've got people on the streets without fear who are assembling, getting together, creating new companies, creating jobs, and the economy, tourism's up, companies are moving in. I mean, they thought in El Salvador they would have 1 or 2 years of economic downturn, but in fact they had no economic downturn. It's been straight up. So you don't need to have an economy run by crooks is the message. In the UK, for example, I'll give you an example. A few years ago, the UK decided that, our debt to GDP doesn't look very attractive. We have too much debt and not enough GDP. So the exchequer of the exchange is going to include now both heroin sales and prostitution in our GDP, so that the debt will look smaller. Right. And that was a public policy. That was a policy that they put forward and stated it as such, that prostitutes are hardworking and, we should include them in GDP. Heroin users are helping to support their communities. We should include that in GDP. So this is the strange world we live in, where there's no differentiation in the economy between somebody looting $900 at Target and somebody paying for something for $900 at Target, because at the end of the day, they're just triggering a $900 bailout in one shape or another, more money printing. And then you've got this Titanic sized problem sinking into the sea of fiat money abyss. And okay, so the left is completely incapable of doing anything. On the right, I think that's the only place you're going to find some smart people stepping forward. That's where you find most of the Bitcoin support. Putting, let's say, RFK aside for a second, Robert Kennedy Jr. is come out, he's been talking about Bitcoin. He understands Bitcoin, but now he's an independent because he couldn't get any hearing in the Democratic Party. Right. Mm-hmm. So mostly it's on the right. And this is a global phenomenon. It hews toward hard money. It's a hard money standard, a hard money economy, a gold, better than gold, having a gold money standard. And so that's where the answers are, because there's no answers on the left anymore. I mean, this is where Javier in Argentina, he is incredibly animated when he talks about the quote unquote libtards and, socialists as scum. And these are his words. He's completely attacking the left and the liberals and the progressives, and with a chainsaw, like he's going to take a chainsaw and just and cut this cancer of their socialist agenda out of the economy. And that won him the election. And if you look at it in terms of Bitcoin, it starts to make some sense, right? And anyway, so that's my answer to that.
So well, let me address a couple of things here. I think, there is no real left in America anymore. It's the Democratic Party is not the left. They're a corporate, it's part of the kleptocracy. So Milei is an interesting guy. I talked about him on my show the other day. I think for Bitcoin, if Argentina goes to Bitcoin, I think that's a very good thing. The concern I have with him is he's pro-Israel, and pro-Israel that's part of the war machine. That's part of the military industrial complex, and which is part of the central banks. The central banks fund the war machine. And so that a Bitcoin president in El Salvador, that overall is a good thing. This particular guy, I don't know. I don't know that I'm that excited about him. And with regard to why he
Bitcoin says a lot of things. He says he's an expert in tantric sex, right? His key, what he learned from Donald Trump, is that the way to get through the gatekeepers in the media world is by hitting them with a barrage of insanity.
Right.
And he says things that are clearly insane, but they're also, within that context, he's saying some truths about the economy, which is what I focus on. And because he's got like 2 or 3 advanced degrees in economics, and he worked at very high levels as an economic advisor. He comes from the Hayek school of Austrian economics, and he's incredibly articulate on the subject, and he knows what he's talking about. Everything else that's not related to the economics and looking at Bitcoin, I ignore, because I don't think it's going to be relevant. I have said that you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you, right? So it has this ability to change people once they start thinking about it, once they start using it. And I think that'll be the case in Argentina. The only risk that I see is that the shitcoiners show up, like Coinbase and Brian Armstrong and these others, Jeremy Allaire at Circle. And those guys are on the level of CZ or Sam Bankman-Fried. They're incredibly bad actors, and they're destructive. And they have as all con men do, they have a way of worming their way into situations. So hopefully he can avoid getting attacked by those folks. We're working to kind of get a mission to Argentina, to representing what's been going on in El Salvador, and talking about what we feel would be the right course of action would be to set up a similar perimeter to keep out the shitcoins, because there's no incremental gain you're going to get from a shitcoiner that would be worth sacrificing the brand value of being Bitcoin maximalist, right? So Bitcoin maximalism as a brand carries with it incredible benefits that no incremental gain from some minor shitcoin can ever hope to bring to upset that equation. And so we're hoping to make that voyage, hopefully soon.
Yeah, I think my thing where I study history a lot. And so the economic depression of the 30s brought about a lot of right-wing populism because the liberals did nothing and they allowed this crap to happen. So I worry about right-wing populism going into the fascism of like Mussolini and whatnot. And because the liberals are doing nothing, the Democrats, it's like Chris Hedges' book, Death of the
Well,
Liberals.
there's right-wing populism, and fascism, which is the merging of corporations with the state. And but that's not the part of the right wing I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Ron Pauls of the world and others who have spoken about the central bank, and ultimately that would extend to the benefits of decentralization. Fascists would not be for decentralization, right? They're for a centralized power. And Bitcoin is decentralized money. It would be anti-fascist. It would be anti-right-wing extremism. It's anti-authoritarianism. It's it's a joke when people in the mainstream press refer to President Bukele as an authoritarian in some way or a dictator in some way. No dictator would make Bitcoin legal tender and allow 6.5 million of the population to become individually sovereign with unconfiscatable money. That would be the complete opposite of a dictator. This is a liberator. This is somebody who wants the people to express their best selves, in a way that helps the community and creates a feedback loop that's positive. So, I think there needs to be a little bit of nuance, when you're using, the broad strokes of right, left, liberals and conservatives. What I'm saying about the conservatives are that within the conservatives are the hard money crowd, the Bitcoin crowd, the Ron Pauls, the audit the Fed crowd, the people who are saying that fiat money is really the root of the problem. If you go back to Occupy Wall Street, which was kind of a left-wing phenomenon, they rightfully pinned the blame on Wall Street. Okay. I mean, because that's the root of all of the problems is the money printing. But the extension of that, the way to take it deeper is to look at what drives Wall Street, and that is the dollar and fiat money. So anyone who was doing Occupy Wall Street should be, all about getting on the Bitcoin train. Our friend Lee, what's his?
Camp.
Lee Camp, right? Lee Camp is like, he came out of Occupy Wall Street. He made his bones on Occupy Wall Street. And, we were talking to him about Bitcoin forever. He's not jumping on it. Tim Pool.
Got him on it a little. Tim
Pool, he's been circling the Bitcoin, for years now. He's not willing to come down to El Salvador and actually, if he got an open invitation. Joe Rogan, why is he playing dumb? What's the wrong with Joe Rogan? I mean, he's a smart guy. Why would he be so tone deaf when it comes to Bitcoin? Where are these people? And the fact is that they're missing the boat. They're going to miss it. They're going to be left holding their dick, basically. Not to put too fine a point on it, but they're going to be out there, nothing. They got nothing. And it's all the party's moving to El Salvador. That's where the party is. It's got Bitcoin. It's got the beach. It's got volcanoes. It's got Max and Stacy. It's got President Bukele. It's got the Miss Universe contest. It's got pupusas, 3 for $1. You can live, you can feed yourself and your family for 50 cents.
I'm coming down in February. Like, I'm making the move. So I want to talk about this and then I'll let you go. But you bring up so many interesting points here. And this is the problem I have with lefties is they don't, to me, Bitcoin is this lefty socialist movement. It's this thing, anyone can own it. It's the thing that takes away the central banks. It depowers the Wall Street. It takes away the war machine. And a lot of progressive lefties are like, oh no, they don't get it. Like I keep telling them, they're like, oh, it's another scam thing. I go, there's no Bitcoin CEO that's going to get arrested. And I see it as this tool that would help an activist movement. Like if again, like all these Occupy people, some of them I know got into Bitcoin and they saw it because like WikiLeaks was getting paid in Bitcoin when they got their PayPal money taken away and all this stuff. And I'm trying to get this message across to lefties of why they should buy Bitcoin. I lost my house in the 2008 housing crisis. I lost in 2010. That's one of the things that woke me up. I got screwed over. I saw Bush and Obama bail out the banks, and I found out how it was so corrupt and they allowed these banks to steal my home. And it was gnarly. And so that's why I've been such on a Bitcoin, hey, buy Bitcoin and get out of it. But I don't know how to communicate to the left.
Well, you're making an excellent point that this is tailor-made for the left, right? Everything the left is talking about that they're concerned about with is Bitcoin would facilitate their agenda. And absolutely. AOC or these folks, they don't understand that Bitcoin is how they would fulfill their agendas. What they're hoping to accomplish as politicians, they can do it via Bitcoin, right? I mean, you're making an excellent point. It is, ultimately it goes back to, Bitcoin is an open source project, right? And open source is in the technology field is an innovation, a revelation. Linus Torvald with Linux, Linux is an open source software protocol that eventually, replaced Microsoft in many instances. It's because you've got the power of the crowd, and the crowd you could replace crowd with community, or the society, right? I mean, the lefties are saying we want to protect the society. We want to protect everyone, the least advantaged, the lowest income. Well, you do that through open source projects where nobody has a strategic advantage over everybody else. And that's what Bitcoin is. It's not proof of stake. Where proof of stake, like in the fiat money world, the more money you have, the more ability you have to make policy, to influence. So the game is to make as much money and then change the law to make it easier for you to make more money. And then ultimately the least advantaged, or the people who don't have a lobbyist working for them in Washington, they lose out. And then the lefties come along and say, we need to make it fair by giving them some money. We're going to print some money and give it to them to make it fair. But unfortunately, that crowds out legitimate investment and legitimate entrepreneurialism, which is not getting funded the way it should be, which would create the jobs and the opportunities in a more fair way. That's where the equanimity comes in, would be fairness of opportunity, not fairness in outcome. You cannot dictate outcome. You can only dictate opportunity. I mean, so this is what the left is completely missing the boat. Cenk Uygur over there. I mean, this guy is so far off the map. He's just completely missed the boat. But with Bitcoin, there's there is people. Anyway, I'll go ahead. Go ahead. Move. Let's move on. Let's move on. Let's move on.
Well, I really appreciate it. I mean, the thing that was so cool about adopting Bitcoin, I was like the only comedian there, and it was all these tech and finance people, which is awesome. But the thing that I love about the Bitcoin community is everybody comes from all these different places, different walks of life, different political backgrounds. It's largely a lot of conservative and libertarian, but everyone wants to come. The majority of the people are coming in looking for solutions. And they're like, this is how Bitcoin can fix this problem and this problem and this problem and this problem. And that's what I love about it. And then ultimately, nobody's got a problem with me because I have a different point of view than a lot of the people there. They're just like, oh, they're listening to what I'm saying. We have a discussion, maybe even a little debate. But at the end of the day, we both love Bitcoin and we see the power. We see how it can change things for the better. So as we've seen now, so what Bukele has done is amazing. I've been down to El Salvador twice now, and I mean, when I was there in June to where I was just there, 2 weeks ago, I saw new roads built in El Zonte, which is Bitcoin Beach. And like that, it's just, the progress is stunning. With possibility of Argentina going Bitcoin, I see this as like El Salvador was the first domino to fall to where more of, it looks like Central and South America, Latin America in general, are going to start going to Bitcoin. Where else do you see? I mean, what other countries do you think in the short run are going to probably adopt the Bitcoin standard?
Right. Well, it's proving to be a vote getter, right? So the Argentine election, part of getting votes was to adopt a Bitcoin policy. It's been a huge vote winner in El Salvador. And I think so. You're right. In the region, Central America, Latin America, it'll be, people are starting to wake up to the politics of Bitcoin, that you can win elections with a Bitcoin policy and a security policy. Pretty much the formula that was mapped out in El Salvador. And it's a huge winning formula. The President Bukele's got a 93% popularity rating, the highest in the world. It's the highest I've ever seen in my years observing these things. And so he's clearly got a good policy mix, and it's security, economic freedom, Bitcoin, and the rest of it. So that will definitely resonate throughout the region. And then you have pockets where things are popping up. So a politician in Germany just recently came out and they said they want to push a Bitcoin agenda. You've got so in Europe, all over Europe, it's differently. The countries where the currency is deteriorating, you have more emphasis to solve the inflation problem with Bitcoin. So you're going to have, that will be where things perk up. In economies that are centralized, highly centralized, like China, it would be less of an issue because they are very much a very centralized command and control economy. So that's not going to be in the works. Although when China and Russia and Iran are now doing a lot of trading deals, they are walking away from the dollar and they're trading in their own currencies, and they're going to trade in gold, and they'll probably trade in Bitcoin on the sovereign level. And that will trickle down to the individual level at some point. Again, because once you start to go down the Bitcoin path, it just makes more and more sense. The more you study it, the more you use it, the more you realize how antiquated and ridiculous the current system is. And this affects everybody. So, I mean, as far as having different folks coming into the Bitcoin space of different political persuasions or different philosophies, ultimately, we all have faith that the Bitcoin is on its own vector. It doesn't need us, and it's taking us to a place we want to be, because nobody has any control over Bitcoin. It's on its own path. It's taking us somewhere. It was really the discovery of this protocol, which is the discovery of perfect money. And that has impacted our societies and even our species. I mean, you could say that the same way. Let's say the discovery of fire, had a profound impact on human. The printing press, the electric light, these things have profound impacts on us as a species, as a culture, as a population. And it changes the direction, the path that we're on. The path that Bitcoin is on, it's on a unique path where it crosses over from the physical world into the spiritual world in a lot of ways. I was talking to Jimmy Song recently, he's been writing some great books, including Thank God for Bitcoin. And he made the point that the concept of money is already an abstract concept to begin with, and that when you use gold, gold is a physical representation of an abstract concept. But when you get into Bitcoin, it's an more abstract, which is more in keeping with our psyches, in our communal understanding of what money is to begin with. So it's actually we're getting back to the beginning with Bitcoin. It's almost like the big bang of our consciousness is being restarted. We're being reset. They hit the reset button, because under the fiat money standard and the gold standard, humanity was heading toward extinction. I would say it's just the incentives driving the global economy were horrible. So the environments were collapsing. The biospheres are collapsing. The ability to maintain billions of people on the planet is not working, and just the whole thing is collapsing. It needed to be reset. So Bitcoin is that reset button, and we're pretty young into it. We're only 13, 14 years into it. But now I think the next 5 to 10 years, you'll see that, that hockey stick moment where you go from kind of grinding along to suddenly, it takes a quantum leap, and there's huge change in people's consciousness. What is money? And I've said that Bitcoin demonetizes violence and war, because if it's unconfiscatable, it's foolish to come at me with an army to try to take my Bitcoin, because no amount of violence or coercion will separate me from my private keys, because if they're properly stored, it's unconfiscatable. There's nothing to do. So the idea of maintaining standing armies becomes kind of foolish, because you can't take the property. The property is unconfiscatable. So the only way you can get some of my Bitcoin is to come to me and say, "Oh, I want you to sell. I have some art I'd like you to buy, or I have a service that you need, and I'll do it for Bitcoin." So that's peace. So it monetizes peace. It monetizes love, and it demonetizes war. So that's a fact. That's an economic reality, and it's tied to the thing that people deal with every second of their lives. Every second of your life, there's somebody sending you a bill somewhere, some insurance company, some streaming service, some bank. There's a bill heading your way, and then every moment you check your iPhone, it's a bing. You've got another charge, right? So that is draining our collective consciousness to the point of becoming collectively brain dead. Humans, the walking corpses, the Aldous Huxley version of Brave New World, where we're just on the soma and the casino gulag, and we're effectively collectively dead. Bitcoin fixes this, and it resets. It goes back to the individual, and individual responsibility, and individual personality, and individual freedom. But it does so in this decentralized way, in this open source way. So in a lot of ways, it's interesting. There's a lot of paradoxes within the Bitcoin ecosystem, and in this way, it reflects some of the finest art and poetry that we have created over the millennia. Our species is full of paradox and simile and metaphor, and this is how we get along through life, is by differentiating between light and dark, and between right and wrong. And we're constantly making these thoughts in our head, and how do we fit? So Bitcoin, having a Bitcoin standard, means you have a one global measure of truth. Everyone maps to that truth. So it doesn't matter what your political beliefs are, as long as you have some mapping to the Bitcoin standard, you and I can have a conversation, because we have some commonality. Everyone ultimately would have some degree of commonality. Whereas today, in a fiat money world, we have fanatical opposition and no commonality. The people who are killing each other this month consider themselves to have no commonality. They consider themselves to be mutually exclusive. This world's not big enough for both of us, so one of us has to die. Right? So there's no commonality whatsoever. That's a fiat money system, because every time you make a mistake in a fiat money world, you can just print more money. And if you're the person printing the money, then you can take the moral high road and say, well, I'm right because I'm printing the money. Right? That proves I'm right, because look at my bank account. I've got all this printed money in my bank account. That means I'm right. That's my righteous, that's my moral prerogative. I'm right because I have a lot of printed money. And so the other side says, oh yeah, well, we're going to print a lot of money. Okay. So now what happens? Well, you have inflation, right? So, and that's inflation just broke out, and it's not going to go down anytime soon because you've got people at war. Ultimately, the weapon of choice is money printing.
Right.
The Pentagon is a giant money printer. It sucks up 50% of our tax revenue to support nuclear subs, you know, in the middle of the ocean to go sail around, to try to defend property that's indefensible when you compare it to Bitcoin, which is actually the only true property that's unconfiscatable, separates money from state. So these are all changes that are happening. And this is what the institutional money is realizing, the BlackRocks and these other folks, about Bitcoin. And so you're going to see a rotation out of these other assets like stocks and bonds and property and gold. They all get demonetized. All that flows into Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin price continues to head toward 1 million, 2 million, 5 million. And all these other things just continue to be demonetized and end up like the Venezuelan Bolivar, just litter, garbage in the street that people just, you know, use it to line their cat boxes. You know, it's cat litter, essentially. You're wrapping fish in this stuff. It's worthless stuff. It's just, it's ridiculous. You know, I would tear some up right now, but I don't have any handy. But usually at this point, I start tearing up paper money and I'm like, hey, it's worthless. But, you know, it is. There's nothing to it.
Well, Max, this is awesome, man. I love having you on the show. Thank you for taking time. I know it's like a holiday week and everything, and explaining this. And it's important for my audience to hear. My audience, like I said, I really want lefties to wake up to this thing because to me, it's a tool for lefty activism. But I love how you explain it, and everything that you're saying, I totally resonate with, because just these Pacific Bitcoin and Adopting Bitcoin conference, hanging out with all these Bitcoiners, I see this, what you're talking about. There's all this artwork. People have all this creative.
Exactly.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, so art, you know, typically all the lefties like to go to Museum of Modern Art and drink some wine and eat some brie and talk about, you know, Kant and, you know, Keynes and Paul Krugman in the New York Times. And there's plenty of that going on in Bitcoin. You know, if you want to see art and drink wine and eat French cheese, you can do so in Bitcoin. We're not going to throw you out. You can be a culture snob and read the New York Times. We're not going to hold that against you, because we know that if you're in a Bitcoin room, that you have some hope. There's some hope yet for you. You know, even though you're reading the Washington Post and you're degenerate and a parasite and brain fogged and tone deaf, you know, it's okay. You're welcome into our room, and because you understand at least the beginning of Bitcoin, you're willing to take. You know, I started Shitcoiners Anonymous.
Yes,
you know, for these shitcoiners, for like, you know, BitBoy is this guy. He's a classic shitcoiner anonymous. Like, you know, the shitcoiners they're just. They need to go to Shitcoiners Anonymous. You know, they're addicted to the shitcoins.
Yeah,
and they act out. And they lose it all. They just lose it all. And so you see it all time and time again. But the point is not to try to. They have to you know, hit bottom with their shit coins, and then they'll from there they can enter Shitcoiners Anonymous and recover. They can recover from their shitcoinery, right? But so yeah, I mean, that's one of my major contributions to this industry. Is to recognize that the shitcoiners, they're not just wrong, they have a disease. Shitcoining is a disease. It's not just bad technology, it's not just bad incentives, it's not just crooks and greedy people. They have a disease, and we shouldn't hold that against them, especially when there's help available at Shitcoiners Anonymous.
Well, that's great that God can grant you the serenity to accept the fact that shitcoins are bad.
Oh yeah, well, I have the whole 12 steps I laid out, you know, and I read it out at the event that we were both at,
Yes.
In where was that anyway? Adopting Bitcoin?
That was Adopting Bitcoin, the comedy show at Adopting Bitcoin. You
Where
read that?
was that?
That was in El Salvador. That was
Oh, right, El Salvador. And that was great. You know, we I think a lot of people were happy to hear that path being built out of their darkest hour. They should remake that movie Lost Weekend.
That was
You know,
shitcoiners.
it was a shitcoiner. You know, they're hiding shitcoins in under the bed. You know, they're trying to keep their shitcoining secret from their family. They lose it all. They're on the street. You know, you could get BitBoy. I'm sure he would play the lead in Lost Weekend, the shitcoin version, and get him for like $10 because he's flat broke now because of his shitcoining.
Yeah, because he lost his Lamborghini. All he's got is a fanny pack.
Yeah.
Well, this was awesome, Max. I really appreciate you coming on the show. It was great seeing you come up to in El Salvador. I will be back there, and I'm going to come down and stay a lot longer. And there's all that stuff you and I talked about. I'm working on all that. So, so thank you to you and Stacy and everybody in El Salvador, because it's truly amazing. I travel a lot, and I've been to a lot of countries just in the last couple of years, and El Salvador is like one of the only places where there's hope. I mean, it's really it's palpable there. And it's not just the Bitcoiners that have moved down there. It's the locals. It's the El Salvadorians have hope. Because like you said, when you arrest the gangsters, everybody basically got a 30% pay raise because they're not paying extortion money every week. So everyone's like free and safe and happy. And it's fantastic. So it's great.
You know, you saw the new library that they just opened up.
Unreal.
Right. I told you, like just 2 blocks from there, you can buy a building for $100,000 and open up your own comedy club.
I'm working on that, Max.
You know, what the hell are you doing? What's this? Rocket? What is this channel? You know, where am I? You could have your own yuck clubs in El Salvador.
I am
Graham Elwood presents El Salvador yuck El Salvador. It's the new Times Square of Central America. They had 55,000 visitors the first week to that library. Wow. They could have all been at Graham Elwood's yuck club. You get some laughs and a pupusa for $5. What are you doing? What are you doing? Where are you?
I'm just
in
trying
Los Angeles. What's the place? Is a dump.
Yes. Well, I tell you what, Max, if you can help me with some investors for Graham Elwood's yuck club, I'm down there tomorrow.
Okay. Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm in. I'll do it. I'm in. Max, thank you so much for being on our show, man. Tell Stacy I said hello. Tell everybody in El Salvador I said hello. And we will talk to you very, very soon, my friend. Happy holidays.
Bye.
All right. Take care. Max Keiser, ladies and gentlemen. Wasn't that fantastic? Wasn't that fantastic? And you got to hear his Shitcoin Anonymous thing, which is so he read that on stage at the show. It was very funny. It was a lot of fun. He actually first put that online like a month or so ago when that BitBoy Ben guy had his meltdown. So that was great. Thank you so much, everybody in the chat. I know we had some, I'll answer the super chats. We had one come in. Matt S. Shave Your Knuckles for Justice. Thank you, Matt, for supporting our show. 10 years ago, I would have been a proud liberal Dem. Lately, the right Republicans have been the voice of less war and progressive ideas. Isn't that insane? That like the liberals and the Democrats are the pro-war party now? Isn't that insane? Like America is just a clown car. It's just a clown car. But it was good to hear Max, we obviously have a lot of lefties on the show, but as he identified, he's more of the Rand Paul kind of conservative, the hard money people. And that is a distinction. We just make these generalizations. The right is this and the left is that. And we know as lefties that there's a lot of nuance to the left. We don't identify, I don't identify with like big Joe Biden supporters and Kamala Harris and that crowd. I don't support or identify them. Just like, Rand Paul and those guys they probably don't identify a lot with Trump on a lot of issues, but they identify in the hard money. So thank you, Matt, for supporting our show. Matt S. again, Shave Your Knuckles for Justice, Matt. Very much appreciated, Matt, that you are supporting everything that we are doing. Here's something to get you started with Graham's Yuck Club. Thank you so much. No, I've talked to Mac several times. He's like, dude, you could get a club down here. I'm like, all right. I don't got a couple $100,000 lying around just yet, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it because I would like to get a club down there. It would be really cool. There's a lot of cool stuff there's a lot of cool stuff down there with show business. I mean, entertaining. I think El Salvadorian people, after 4 decades of being in either civil war or gang violence, are waiting to express themselves artistically about everything they've been through, and they're waiting to do that. And I think there's just an amazing opportunity down there. So Alfred Das Liebe, what's up, Graham? I forgot today was Wednesday, and enjoy your show. This is my Thanksgiving hangout. Max is a bit of a hippie libertarian too at times. I wish Biden was remotely flirty with any one communist idea. I know. No, the Max is such an interesting cat. You know, he's a finance guy, and he, like you said, he leans more right, and he doesn't like the Federal Reserve, but then he has these very expansive, ideas of peace and all of that. And that's the thing that's the thing that's wonderful. That's the thing why America is everyone's lumped into this red or blue category. And where does a guy like Max Keiser fit? With his, basically at the end of the interview, he's talking about all this peace and love and art and expression. And yet he has more conservative when it comes to finance ideas. So where does he fit? Why do we only have 2 parties in this country? You know what I'm saying? But that was just a fantastic interview. Always a fantastic interview. Leftover Beefcake over on the Rockfin. Folks, you can support the show too by going to rockfin.com/Graham Elwood and tip the show like Leftover Beefcake did. Shave your knuckles for justice. Please do not use this contribution to buy a subscription to the New York Times or some fancy French cheese. Thank you. I was going to jump in, but Max was on such a roll. I was going to be like, yeah, Brie is the most pretentious, overrated cheese there is. Yeah. Hey, us libertarians like art too. Make a living with it. Oh, right on, Matt. That's cool. But yeah, what a fantastic conversation. It was really, really cool. Always learn a lot from him. Very knowledgeable. Yeah. And then, so it was, oh man, it was great having Max on the show. It's just fantastic. It's really, he's so knowledgeable, and then just an interesting person. So I like, one of the things I've been very lucky with my life as an entertainer and everything is that I get to meet and travel all these interesting people. Chad, new member. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a YouTube member. We appreciate it. Holly Horn is here, our moderator. I know you didn't get him. I'm sorry, Holly. I saw you show up late in the chat, and my fault. I said where I was going to go live at 5 today, but then when I saw the CZ news this morning, I reached out to Max and I said, are you available? And because of where he's at time-wise, he's like, can we go at 6 o'clock Eastern time? So I wanted to accommodate him. So that's why we started so much earlier, but all good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Oh man, that was so I will take that interview and clip out certain segments of it and put it on, spread it out on the YouTube channel the next week. But no show tomorrow because it's Thanksgiving, no show Friday. So we'll be back probably Monday afternoon at 5 o'clock. And you guys are fantastic. You guys are fantastic. So, well, there it is. I'm sorry. There's chat again. There's the new member. Whoops. Bro, got it. I'm still here too. Wendy, hello. Gulag Casino, that was hilarious and very much on point. Very much on point. Clown car, yeah, it was really cool. Yeah. All right, folks, I'm going to take off. I'm going to try to watch the sunset here. And you guys have a wonderful, if you're in America, if you're celebrating Thanksgiving or Indigenous Peoples Day, whatever you want to celebrate, enjoy that, or just have a nice Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday, whatever. Have a great weekend. This is how you do memberships here. Holly Horn's putting that. Thank you, Holly, for being our moderator. Thank you for Chad, Alex Sleepy, Matt S, Leftover Beefcake, the super chatters and the tippers. We very much appreciate you guys keeping the show running. And happy Thanksgiving, free Assange, free Palestine. Absolutely. All right, guys. Thank you for watching. Have a great night, great day, wherever it is in your part of the world. And if you've just joined and want to watch the rest of this interview now, I will be putting up at patreon.com/Graham Elwood and rockfin.com/Graham Elwood. You can watch the whole Max Keiser interview right now. And the backlog of the whole back catalog of all of the live streams. You get to watch all of the unedited stuff. So thank you all so much. Happy Thanksgiving. Have a great day or night, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.